45% of America's fuel supply, shut down by a single stolen password. On May 7, 2021, the largest fuel pipeline in the United States went dark. Colonial Pipeline, which carries 45% of the East Coast's gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel across 5,500 miles from Houston to New Jersey, had been hit by ransomware. Within hours, the company made a decision that would send shockwaves across America. They shut everything down. All of it. 2.5 million barrels of fuel per day stopped. Gas stations from Florida to Virginia began running dry. Prices spiked to their highest level since 2014. People panicked. In some states, they filled plastic bags with gasoline. The President of the United States declared a state of emergency. And the hackers responsible? They didn't work for any government. They were a criminal business operating out of Russia with a help desk, a phone number, and a customer service team. This is the story of how a single stolen password nearly crippled America's energy infrastructure. To understand the impact, you need to understand what Colonial Pipeline actually is. It's not just a pipe in the ground. It's the single largest refined petroleum pipeline system in the United States. 5,500 miles of pipeline stretching from Houston, Texas to Linden, New Jersey. It carries 2.5 million barrels per day, roughly 100 million gallons of gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel. That represents 45% of all fuel consumed on the East Coast. Military bases, airports, hospitals, and millions of commuters all depend on this one system. When it goes offline, there is no backup. There is no alternative route that can handle that volume. Colonial Pipeline is the kind of critical infrastructure that most people never think about until it stops working. The group responsible called themselves DarkSide. They were a Russian-speaking cybercriminal organization that operated on a ransomware-as-a-service model. Think of it like a franchise. DarkSide developed the ransomware software, the negotiation infrastructure, and the payment systems. Then they recruited affiliates, independent hackers who would use DarkSide's tools to attack specific targets. The profits were split. DarkSide took 25% of ransoms under $500,000 and 10% of ransoms over $5 million. They had a professional website, a press room where they announced their attacks, and even a code of ethics. They claimed they would never attack hospitals, schools, nonprofits, or government organizations. They positioned themselves as the gentlemen criminals of the cyber world. But on May 7th, their affiliate crossed a line that would bring the full weight of the United States government down on them. The breach itself was almost embarrassingly simple. An employee's VPN password had been compromised. It was likely obtained from a previous data breach and reused across multiple accounts. The password appeared in a batch of leaked credentials on the dark web. And critically, Colonial Pipeline's VPN system did not require multi-factor authentication. No second factor, no verification code, just a username and password. Once inside the network, the attackers moved quickly. They exfiltrated approximately 100 gigabytes of data in just 2 hours. Then they deployed the ransomware, encrypting Colonial Pipeline's billing and accounting systems. The pipeline's operational technology, the systems that actually control fuel flow, was not directly compromised. But Colonial Pipeline couldn't track billing. They couldn't invoice customers. So they made the decision to shut down operations entirely. The shutdown was immediate and total. 5,500 miles of pipeline went offline on May 8th. Within 48 hours, the effects cascaded across the Southeast. Gas stations from Florida to Virginia began running out of fuel. In some areas, over 70% of stations had no gasoline. Lines stretched for blocks. Fistfights broke out at pumps. And in a scene that went viral, people were caught filling plastic bags and storage bins with gasoline. Average fuel prices shot up to their highest point since 2014. Airlines warned of potential flight disruptions. The military prepared contingency plans. On May 9th, President Biden declared a state of emergency, lifting restrictions on fuel transport by truck and tanker to try to fill the gap. But no number of trucks could replace 2.5 million barrels per day of pipeline capacity. Behind the scenes, Colonial Pipeline was making a controversial decision. Within hours of the attack, they paid the ransom, 75 Bitcoin, worth approximately $4.4 million at the time. In exchange, DarkSide provided a decryption tool, but the tool was so slow that Colonial Pipeline ended up using their own backups to restore most systems anyway. The decision to pay was heavily criticized. Critics argued it incentivized future attacks. Supporters said the company had no choice. Every hour of downtime was costing the economy hundreds of millions of dollars. Colonial Pipeline CEO Joseph Blunt later testified before Congress that paying the ransom was the hardest decision he'd ever made. But he believed it was the right tool to have in the toolbox, given the uncertainty of the situation. On June 7, 2021, exactly 1 month after the attack, the Department of Justice made a stunning announcement. They had recovered 63.7 of the 75 Bitcoin that Colonial Pipeline paid as ransom. That was approximately $2.3 million, or 84% of the original payment. The FBI had traced the Bitcoin through the blockchain to a specific digital wallet. They obtained a court order to seize the funds. It was one of the first major successful recoveries of a ransomware payment and sent a clear message. Cryptocurrency is not as untraceable as criminals believe. DarkSide, facing unprecedented heat from the US government, announced it was shutting down. Their servers were seized. Their Bitcoin wallets were emptied. The group claimed they were disbanding permanently. But cybersecurity researchers believe most of its members simply rebranded and continued operating under new names. The Colonial Pipeline attack changed American cybersecurity policy overnight. On May 12th, just 5 days after the attack, President Biden signed Executive Order 14028 on improving the nation's cybersecurity. It mandated zero-trust architecture for federal systems, required software supply chain security standards, created a cyber safety review board modeled after the National Transportation Safety Board. CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, issued emergency directives for critical infrastructure operators. The Transportation Security Administration, which had never previously regulated pipeline cybersecurity, issued mandatory security directives requiring pipeline operators to report cyber incidents and implement specific security measures. The attack proved something that cybersecurity experts had warned about for years. America's critical infrastructure was dangerously vulnerable, and it took a gas crisis to make anyone listen.